The dream versus reality. Imagine owning a machine that turns raw oil into the fuel that powers the entire world. Every car, every flight, every shipment. Somehow, they all depend on you. Sounds like a license to print money, right? Well, not exactly. Because despite how essential refineries are, almost nobody builds new ones anymore. In fact, for decades, it practically stopped happening. So what changed? Why is something so important? Also one of the hardest businesses to succeed in. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why owning a refinery can make you insanely rich or wipe out billions faster than you think. And if you enjoy deep dives into how money really works, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this channel is all about breaking down complex systems into simple ideas. Chapter 1. The cost of entry. Let's start with the obvious question. How much does it actually cost to get into this business? At the very low end, you could technically buy or build a small, outdated processing setup for a few $1,000,000. But that's like calling a bicycle a transportation empire. A real refinery, the kind that matters, costs billions. And not just 1 or 2 billion. We're talking anywhere from $5 billion to $15 billion, sometimes even more depending on how advanced it is. Why so expensive? Because modern refineries don't just separate oil, they transform it. They break molecules apart, rearrange them, upgrade them into higher-value fuels. Every additional process you add increases both the cost and the potential profit. But here's the twist. The money isn't the hardest part. The real challenge is getting permission to build one in the first place. Chapter 2. The invisible barrier. Building a refinery isn't just a construction project. It's a regulatory marathon. Before a single piece of equipment goes up, you're dealing with environmental approvals, air quality limits, water discharge rules, community impact studies, and multiple layers of government oversight. And this process doesn't take months. It can take years, sometimes over a decade. That's why companies rarely build new refineries anymore. Instead, they expand existing ones. It's faster, cheaper, and far less risky. So for decades, the industry has followed one simple rule. Don't build new. Upgrade what already exists. Chapter 3. Where the money actually comes from. Now here's where things get interesting. Most people assume refineries make money when oil prices go up. But that's not how it works. Refineries don't profit from oil itself. They profit from the difference between what they pay for oil and what they earn from selling fuel. That difference is everything. Think of it like this. If crude oil costs $80 per barrel and the refined products sell for the equivalent of $100, the refinery makes $20 per barrel before expenses. That gap is the entire business. And here's the catch. That gap moves constantly. Sometimes it's wide and profitable. Other times, it shrinks so much that profits disappear entirely. So refineries aren't betting on oil prices going up. They're betting on that gap staying wide enough to survive. Chapter 4. One barrel, multiple businesses. Here's something most people don't realize. A refinery doesn't produce just one thing. From a single barrel of crude oil, you get multiple products: gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and several others. Each one has its own market. Each one has its own price. And each one behaves differently throughout the year. For example, gasoline demand spikes during travel-heavy months. Diesel demand is tied more to industry and logistics. Jet fuel depends on air travel trends. So running a refinery is like managing several businesses at the same time, all connected to one input. If one product underperforms, it can drag down the entire operation. That's why operators constantly adjust output and hedge their exposure. Because they're not just producing fuel, they're managing risk. Chapter 5. The seasonal roller coaster. Now let's talk about timing. Because in this industry, timing can make or break your profits. Demand changes throughout the year. Travel seasons, weather conditions, industrial activity, all of these factors shift how much fuel people need. And when demand rises faster than supply, prices jump. That's when refineries make their biggest margins. But when demand slows down, or supply catches up, margins collapse. The same facility that was making massive profits a few months ago can suddenly struggle to break even. Nothing changed physically. Same machines, same workers, same oil. But the economics? Completely different. Chapter 6. Geography matters more than you think. Here's another layer most people overlook. Location. Refineries don't operate in isolation. They're part of regional networks. In some areas, multiple refineries are clustered together. If one goes offline, others can compensate. But in more isolated regions, that safety net doesn't exist. So if a single facility shuts down, supply drops immediately, and prices spike. That's why fuel prices can vary so much depending on where you are. It's not just about global oil markets. It's about local infrastructure. Where the refinery is can matter just as much as what it produces. Chapter 7. The Profit Illusion. Now here's the part that surprises most people. Despite their importance, refineries aren't always highly profitable. In fact, they're often one of the weaker links in the energy chain. Margins fluctuate constantly. Some years are incredibly profitable. Others barely cover costs. And long-term trends aren't helping. As alternative energy grows and fuel efficiency improves, demand for certain products may decline. That puts additional pressure on an already unpredictable business. So while the upside can be huge, the downside is always right there too. Chapter 8. The risk nobody talks about. And then there's the biggest risk of all. Safety. Refineries handle volatile materials under extreme conditions. When something goes wrong, the consequences can be catastrophic. We're talking about accidents that can lead to massive financial losses, legal consequences, and, most importantly, loss of life. One major incident can erase years of profits. And the costs don't stop at the initial damage. Fines, lawsuits, and mandatory upgrades can push the total impact into the billions. So every day a refinery operates, it carries that underlying risk. It's not just a business. It's a high-stakes environment where mistakes are incredibly expensive. Chapter 9. A business built on uncertainty. When you step back, the entire model starts to look very different. This isn't just about refining oil. It's about managing uncertainty. You're dealing with unpredictable markets, strict regulations, massive costs, and constant operational risk. And yet, the world still depends on it. That's the paradox. A business that's essential, but incredibly difficult to succeed in. Chapter 10. Final takeaway. So what does all of this mean? Owning a refinery isn't about controlling oil. It's about navigating a system you can't fully control. You're balancing costs, markets, timing, and risk all at once. When everything lines up, the rewards can be enormous. But when things shift, even slightly, the entire equation changes. And that's why so few new refineries get built. Not because they're useless, but because they're one of the most complex and unforgiving businesses on the planet. If you made it this far, you now understand something most people never think about: how the fuel powering your daily life actually gets to you. And more importantly, why it's not as simple as it seems. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we take complex industries and explain how money really moves, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because the deeper you understand these systems, the better you understand the world around you. I'll see you in the next video.